like a regular person that doesn't film videos for a living, they don't know to look for a kitchen that's not facing north. So when I moved into that apartment, I realized you want a southern-facing kitchen because that's when you'll get the most amount of light.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. Cookbook author and online personality Carolina Gelen is on a mission to share her love of food, which comes into focus in a great new cookbook, Pass the Plate, 100 delicious, highly shareable, everyday recipes. Carolina's journey began in Transylvania, Romania, where she was born and raised. In 2021, she immigrated to the United States to pursue her passion for food full-time. She's a recipe developer and food content creator with work featured in the New York Times and on the Food Network and in Food 52. In this episode, we hear about Carolina's journey to her debut cookbook and what makes her recipes unique and cookable. I really hope you enjoy our conversation. Carolina Gelen, welcome to This is Taste. It's great to meet you. How are you?
It's so nice meeting you, Matt. I'm so excited to be here.
I've been a fan of your work online and now your cookbook, Pass the Plate, which is out this fall. You came in on a red eye from Utah.
I did. I'm a sleeper. When it comes to planes, the minute they turn on those blue lights, I'm falling asleep.
You're a pro.
Yes. To be fair, this time I did have a lot of work to do, so I did pull an all-nighter, but...
You went all-nighter mode.
Yes. But I do that a lot. I'm very much a one-woman show, so I do find myself pulling a lot of all-nighters.
So let me ask you, when you come to New York, you shot your cookbook here, so you're familiar with the city. What are some of your go-tos, places that you like to visit?
Oh, great question. I always have to get a bagel. I've been really gravitating towards Apollo's bagels. They have been really amazing. I only pack a backpack when I come here because I'm usually here for like 2 or 3 days, and I hate carrying like a big luggage with me. But if I have the space, I will get some bagels from here, bring them to Utah, freeze them, and just have them in my freezer at all times.
Yeah.
I'm going to Frankel's and getting their pastrami, just good old classic pastrami. And what else?
Dude, Frankel's is like super underrated.
I
love that call.
I feel like no one really makes it there, but and also their bagels are good too.
Yeah, bagels are good there. Yeah, we're like Katz's town. Like Katz's is great, but
it is great.
But shouts to Frankel's.
It's a classic, you know. Yeah, shout out to Frankel's.
Yeah.
As I was shooting my cookbook, I found myself eating there quite a bit.
That's awesome. So growing up in Romania, I want to get a sense to start, what's food like in your household? And like, how did you pick up these cooking skills that are so innate and inherent? It's obvious you've been doing this for a while.
So growing up, we didn't have a lot growing up. So we cooked our own food at all times. We never went out to eat. Maybe we went out to eat once a year for some special occasion like an anniversary or birthday. But we are very much a meat and potatoes family. So very hearty food. We have polenta, which in Romanian we call mamaliga, potatoes, meat, freshly slaughtered chickens. I always say this, how we lived in an apartment complex and you happen to know people that live in a village, and like they're just going to show up to your door and give you like a freshly slaughtered chicken. So lots of meat and potatoes for sure. And my mother always let me be around her. I was always a creative child. Like I went through a phase of painting, and then I designed like clay earrings and things like that. And food was like my third phase, and that's what really stuck with me. So I grew up watching the Food Network and Jamie Oliver and Yotam Ottolenghi and all these people on TV, and I would always try to replicate what they were doing because I couldn't try their foods at a restaurant or anything, so I'd have to make it myself. And also, I also want to give credit to like the Food Network and all these shows for teaching me English. I think that is English for me is a self-taught language, and I think that's where I picked most of it by watching food shows growing up.
So it's Jamie, it's Alton Brown.
Yes.
What else do you watch? That's amazing that you learned English from Jamie and from Guy Fieri. That's a
Yes,
special kind of
100%.
English you
Yeah,
can
Gordon
learn.
Ramsay, like
Rams.
Master Chef. It's funny, sometimes I catch myself saying certain words in English in certain accents based on whoever taught me that word. Like,
Great.
I'll say something, I found myself saying, knackered. Like, I'm in the US and I'm like, "Oh, man, I'm knackered today."
That's a
And
Jamieism.
yes,
Yeah.
the Americans were like, "What is she saying?" But yes, definitely Chopped also was a huge show.
So cool.
Yeah.
I love this journey. I mean, were you watching it like after school?
Yes, yes, and I was very young. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I think that's where I was able to learn English and sort of absorb and mimic their accents because I was very young, and I was still learning how to speak and how to talk, so I think it was easy for me to just
I
capture.
love that story. Now, have you like met some of these folks? Have you like interacted with like the Food Network? I feel like you got to have a show now.
I know. You know what? I developed some recipes for the Food Network,
Cool.
but I haven't met any. Let me think. Have I met any of them? I haven't met Jamie Oliver. I haven't met Yutama Tolengi, but I might. I
Yeah.
might. Let's just say I've been emailing with a couple of them.
Oh,
So maybe there's gonna be a collaboration popping
I
on
love
Instagram at
this.
any point.
I
Yeah.
love this. We'll watch for that.
Yeah, we'll put it out in the universe. We'll manifest that.
Exactly. We're
Let's just
manifesting on the show. We'll do that.
yes.
Yeah, we'll give
When it's
Jamie a
gonna
call.
be out, I'm gonna credit this moment
Oh,
right
okay.
here.
So great. So like when we went on This Is Taste, we talked about doing a collab with Jamie, and next thing you
Mhm.
know, you're in London in his studio.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
it's happening. Now, let me ask you about Romania. Is there a national dish?
Ooh, so I would say the first thing that comes to mind would be sarmale, which is cabbage rolls.
Okay.
I think but I wouldn't necessarily call it a national dish. I
Right.
think we have a lot of dishes that we make as Romanians, like mamaliga, which is the polenta casserole, or sarmale, which is cabbage rolls. A lot of recipes like that. Placinta is also another one, which is this stuffed pastry with
Yeah.
like cheese, and it's just like it looks like a pita. If I were to compare it with something, it would look like a pita. What else? Chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
It's huge. Like, we always had it growing up. We would have it at least like 3 times a
Well,
week.
you have
Like,
those fresh chickens arriving
yes,
from your nice
exactly. You got
neighbors.
plus, I don't know if people know this, when you slaughter an old rooster, for example, the meat is really tough.
Yep.
But in Romania, we always say how an old rooster makes the best soup.
Nice.
And sometimes it's funny people say that as a saying too.
You're like,
That's
it
an
literally it works.
It's funny. I catch myself doing that. Me being in the US right now, I will translate certain Romanian sayings, like word by word in English, expecting people to know what they mean. So I'll catch myself at a coffee shop being like, you know what? You can't make peace between a cabbage and a goat.
That's so
And
funny.
people stop and they're like, huh?
What
What
is
is
this
this
woman
person
talking
talking
about?
about?
But still, like, it's charming, and it's why, Carolina, we love your content. And I hate using the term, but everyone knows what I mean. So
Mhm,
apologies. Take us back to when you went online, and
mhm.
I'm saying it like you went online official. Was this a slow growth? Was it a slow burn, or did it just like blow up? Because like you're one of the most watched online cooking personalities today. What's the trajectory to get there?
It started slow. It started just by me posting whatever I made for lunch, and then people slowly started asking for recipes. And because I grew up making everything from scratch, like, it's very natural for you to just go to the stove and start cooking something without a recipe. My mother, for example, she never in her life followed a recipe. Even desserts, she's just gonna eyeball a dessert and it just comes out amazingly. But it started like that, and people requesting the recipes, and I learned how to write recipes and what people were interested in and what readers wanted, and I think this process helped me in writing the cookbook because I have such an amazing direct feedback from readers at home and home cooks at home who ask amazing questions. I always encourage them to ask me questions. Like, no question is a dumb question. Ask
No.
it because I'm here to clarify it and help you find your way in the kitchen and really enjoy cooking. And I think that helped me with writing my cookbook because I always had those questions in mind. And I know that I was telling you earlier how if, let's say, you're making a dough and the dough looks a little bit crumbly, I know that if you're a first timer, you're going to be like, oh, I did something wrong. Like, I need to add more water, but you don't. So I always made sure in my instructions to reassure people, like, hey,
It might not look perfect
this
now. This
doesn't
is
look
right.
perfect,
Yeah.
but keep going. And after I started writing recipes, Instagram introduced videos and TikTok came about and all that stuff. And when I started creating videos, I think that's when I saw the blow up. Like,
Yeah,
it's
was there like an overnight viral recipe? You set it like at 9 p.m. and you go to bed and then you wake up and there's like a million something
yes.
something.
It was such a foreign territory for me.
Right.
And they just introduced them, so you don't know what to expect. And you suddenly, because you wouldn't get 2 million views on a picture post or 2 million likes or anything like that. And then you post a video and you suddenly have 5 million views in the first 5 hours. You're like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is very, it's very exciting, but it's also like, whoa, this is just, I remember the first time someone made my recipe and I was like, it was so shocking that someone followed it to the T and it worked, but it also put so much pressure on you
Yeah.
because it's your responsibility to make sure that people are using those ingredients and that the recipe works out.
Carolina, that's
And
like a new
I've
reality for
never,
you.
yes, like I've never done that before. I never wrote a recipe for someone to follow. And especially with English not being my first language, I'm like, I'm extra careful with everything I was putting into these recipes. But yes, I start blowing up. And then the first person who actually reached out to me was someone from the New York Times who saw my video and was interested in me producing some videos for the New York
Yeah.
Times, which I remember getting that email and I thought to myself, that's a scam. I'm in Romania. Like, get a life. Whoever's trying to prank me,
Yeah.
have a good one. Like, I'm not interested in this stuff. But then I went back a week later and I'm like, what if it's real? Because it does say at New York Times. And that's how I signed a freelance contract with them. And that was my first job in the food media industry, which I'm so grateful
Give
for to
credit to
this
the
day.
person at the New York
Yes,
Times.
it's Becky.
Becky.
Becky from the, yes, she
Becky
is their,
Hughes?
yes,
Yeah, Becky Hughes.
she is their social media manager. And I made sure to mention her in my cookbook
I
as
saw
well in the
that, yeah.
credits. Yeah, she helped me a lot with videos as well because she's the one giving me feedback. Her and Natasha, they're giving me feedback on my videos, and I feel like they've been really helping me to refine my
Yeah.
style and my eye with that. And then 6 months later, after taking that first freelance job, Food 52 reached out to me
Great.
and they offered me a recipe resident position at Food 52 back in 2019, 2020. So
Pre-pandemic we're talking.
yes,
Okay.
it was pre-pandemic and then the pandemic hit. So I was like in that awkward period of time where it's like
You're
pre-pandemic
just
and then
starting your career
yes.
and pandemic hits
Mhm.
and like you probably saw your audience grow tremendously during the pandemic.
Definitely. Because everyone's at home, we're all cooking. So I feel like that kept a lot of us from going insane.
For
Just
sure.
having that community and just sharing the love of food with each other helped so many of us. I know it helped me a lot. Just being at home, cooking something just for the sake of cooking it.
How did you come up with your aesthetic? Because you've make choices with your
Mhm.
videos and I like you use a lot of natural light.
Mhm.
You use a framing that it's like tight on the you don't give a lot of space in your kitchen.
Mhm.
And it's a really cool choice because there's an intimacy there. You see the food is obviously presented very in a
Mhm.
cool, quick way. How did you develop this style? Do you edit all your videos yourself?
Yes, I'm doing everything by myself, which is why I pull so many all-nighters. I think it might be time to hire a few
Maybe.
people to help me out
Perhaps.
because I see the gray hairs starting to pop and I'm like, maybe this is my time to hire a team. But I think it's funny that you're mentioning that because you're giving me so much more credit. I started filming these recipes in a maybe like a 2-meter balcony in Romania. It was really, really small. And I had this small marble slab that I used to film on. So I couldn't show all the stuff around the balcony because I remember that's where we kept, I don't know, seltzer and other, we kept like a huge barrel of sauerkraut. So
It was your sauerkraut patio. Of
it was
course
my
it was.
sauerkraut
Obviously.
it was my sauerkraut patio in Romania, and that barrel was so huge, it would take up so much space. I'm like, I can't show that bright red lid in my
Yeah.
videos. So I had to get really close to the food so I don't show all the funny stuff. Let me see if I can find a picture. Because my mother, she texted me.
I love to see it. I love to see the full frame. But I think it's like clearly you've made this choice out of necessity, but it created an aesthetic that I think everyone was really drawn to.
100%. And I think we all eat with our eyes. And I think being able to visualize the food and visualize the steps helps the reader so much. So I do focus on showing all the steps and really making the food exciting, but also approachable for people. Because I feel like when you read a recipe, you understand it to a certain capacity, but then you see the video and you're like, oh, I can make this. That, especially when it comes to cutting instructions, I feel like those are a whole other thing. Maybe it's because English is not my first language, but when it's like crosswise, widthwise, lengthwise, twist this to the left, turn it, it's like a whole thing. But when you see it in a video, it's so much easier. It's funny, no matter where you live, the last place I rented, the kitchen was facing north. And you don't know this before you move to a place or before, or at least someone like a regular person that doesn't film videos for a living, they don't know to look for a kitchen that's not facing north.
Yeah.
So when I moved into that apartment, I realized I had to learn it on
Southern exposure.
Yeah, you want a southern facing kitchen because that's when you'll get the most amount of light.
Most light. Let's talk a little bit about some of the specifics in your book. And I feel like I need to start and say you are the crinkle cake queen, which I love that technique. How did you land on the crinkle cake as kind of a way of doing many different styles, savory, sweet, etc.?
So the crinkle cake trend actually started on TikTok, and it was popularized by this account at Romina Said Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe she has a whole business selling this cake. And it started a few years ago, but I recently revisited that and I wanted to sort of give it a savory take because I've only seen sweet ones. And that's how it started. I have another one that I want to make, which is a crinkle cake caprese, like a caprese crinkle cake with like mozzarella and basil
Describe
and
this a little
tomatoes.
bit, what a crinkle cake is exactly.
So a crinkle cake, you basically take phyllo pastry and you crinkle it, hence the name, and then you bake it until it's nice and golden and crispy. And once it gets to that texture, you pour some sort of custardy liquid to it. So to my savory one, I do a yolk base. So it's like yolk and maybe some heavy cream or milk and spices. If you're going to do the sweet one, similar thing, but add sugar to it. So it's reminiscent of bread pudding, if you will, or the Greek and Turkish and
I had it in Greece.
Yeah,
I had it
and
with
Mediterranean
orange
pastries
syrup.
and Middle Eastern pastries. It's in that genre of dishes.
Genius.
For
I love
sure.
it. Okay, so let me ask you, you dedicate a whole chapter to eggs.
Yes.
Which is a choice.
Mhm,
Which
it
is a
is a
choice I
choice.
support. Not every listener loves eggs. Some folks are egg free. Bless you if that's your zone or your path. But I love an egg. Why decide to go this route?
So I grew up eating eggs for breakfast. That was like a huge thing. Again, the same way someone would show up with chicken to at our apartment. We would have this one neighbor, even now, whenever I haven't been home in 3 years, but I know if I went to go home, he would show up with 2 dozen eggs almost every other day.
Wow.
So you get to a point where it's like there's just so many eggs, you're starting to make pavlovas every day and ice creams and custards. So I grew up eating eggs. They're such an affordable protein that a lot of people have access to, and I always find myself eating eggs for breakfast. It's such an easy breakfast. So I wanted to give people that. I
What's your
wanted
highlight from that chapter?
Oh, you know which one I really love? I have a fennel potato cake.
Oh, cool.
So it's like this really thick hash brown with like fennel and it's fried. So I grate the potatoes
Yeah.
and then I fry it on the stove and then I finish it in the oven so it's nice and tender on the inside. And I top it off with lox. It is like a giant thick latke, like
Yeah.
a really thick, crispy latke. Exactly. So I think that one's definitely up there for
I
me.
love it. I love that idea of the fennel forward
Mm-hmm.
latke. Okay, you're quite canny, pun intended,
Mm-hmm.
with the butter beans.
Mm-hmm.
Because butter beans I feel are so like the shape and the flavor work so well across many different recipes, but it's like the garbanzo is stolen the show.
Mm-hmm.
But you're more butter bean focused. Why center recipes around this ingredient?
It's it's such a great bean with so much texture. I feel like if you try different kinds of beans, the texture of butter beans, I will say it's similar to a garbanzo bean, so it has that bite to it compared to a cannellini bean
Yeah.
that you open from a can and it's
Mush.
like just pure mush, which totally fine. It has its place,
Yeah.
but I prefer that texture and I find myself cooking it a lot from dry and freezing it. So you really get to capture that texture. And I think the size. It's
Yeah.
this gnocchi sized bean and it just holds a sauce so well. And I grew up with a version of it in Romania, that kind of size. We would always make stews from it.
Yeah.
So some sort of stew,
Does canned work
especially
in your recipes?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You don't have to make them from scratch. I don't even think I suggest making any of those from scratch, but if you do, that's a plus. If you don't, just
Yeah.
use the canned
And you can
stuff.
freeze them
It's
too.
faster. Yes, they freeze really
Smart.
well.
I love the
Yeah, I use those super cubes. They are
yeah.
so handy. It's like these silicone trays that are measured in like 1 cup or half a cup or two
I know
cups.
exactly what you're talking about. Those are
And I
great.
freeze them in there so they're all portioned out. And whenever I need a can, I sort of know which one's gonna
You just pull
yield
out
me
like a
that.
cup,
Right.
a cup cube.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina, we often forget about the last recipe in a book, but no more. On page 261, you have a stunning upside down orange olive oil cake that I think needs some credit. Let's talk
Yes.
about it.
I really needed that recipe in there because it's one of my most loved and most popular recipes I've ever shared online. It's an upgraded version of the one I made for Food 52. It was a recipe I made, I believe it was during winter time, and it was never meant to have oranges on it, so it was just an orange olive oil cake with cardamom. And I remember this one time we had so many oranges at home in Romania that I just felt like they belonged there. And I always like to share this story. Growing up during a dictatorship, everything's rationed out. So my family would get citrus during wintertime. And whenever I eat any kind of citrus, mandarin, clementine, oranges, it doesn't matter what it is, whenever you open the fruit and it hits you with that scent and smell like those oils just disperse in the air, my parents are going to tell you the story about how they would only get like one orange during that wintertime or like two or three, like very, very small amount. And it would be such a special thing that they would eat the whole fruit. Like they wouldn't even know that you're supposed to peel it or anything. You would just eat the
Wow.
whole fruit. So I sort of wanted to honor that in this cake and use the whole fruit and make a beautiful pattern around the cake for like this upside down olive oil cake. And it's tender and it's moist. And I remember doing Zoom classes with my community, and it was always such a hit, and it's one of those approachable recipes that really sticks with you,
Thanks for
and it
sharing that
Yeah,
story.
of
It's a
course.
great story. When you talk about the whole fruit, you're using the peel as well?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
so I slice the oranges, and then I candy them in this cardamom syrup,
Yes,
and
yes.
then I arrange them in a beautiful pattern at the bottom of the cake, pour the batter on top, and it bakes so, so well, and I really like it because, what I like to do, I like to add a little bit of olive oil and syrup at the bottom of the cake, so
Yep,
everything stays nice and moist, and then when I flip the cake upside down, I like to brush it with a little bit more oil and with a little bit more syrup,
yep.
and that leftover syrup is really good for drinks, for cocktails, for
Smart to have
things like
that.
that, yeah.
You have, like, really nice knife skills and, like, you're really,
Thank
like,
you.
fluid. Like, talk about your professional career. 'Cause I know you worked in Utah
Mhm.
at a pretty badass restaurant.
Yes, so that's actually what brought me to the US. I had a job opportunity in Utah before I knew anything about Utah. I was just like, "Sure, I'll take a
You're like,
restaurant job."
"Sure."
Yes, it's funny when you don't live in the US, you don't realize that the states are all so different. You
Right.
grow up seeing New York on TV or Hollywood and LA, and you're like, "Oh, everything's like that." And then you get to Utah and you're like, wait a minute, where are the skyscrapers that everyone has been raving about? So that's how I ended up in Utah, and I got to work a few jobs in the Park City resorts. I got to work at an auberge resort
Mm,
and then a few other bakeries and other shops throughout town. I used to work two full-time jobs
wow.
for that whole time, and I used to live with 6 girls in an apartment, and it would be very much like we're gonna hustle while we're here,
Yeah.
and we're gonna make a lot of money that we can bring home and support ourselves because, um, the dollar goes a lot further in Romania
Right.
than it
So you're
does.
sending money back?
Yes, yes, you're sending money back, you're saving money for rent or for whatever you need, and you're just hustling and sleeping 3 hours a night.
Yeah, what's life like? Are you happy? Because it sounds like you're happy because you're learning about food, but you're
Mhm.
obviously working so hard.
You know what? I think that's what made it feasible is enjoying being there and baking bagels and baking pastries and learning more about the industry.
What's Sundance like in working in Park City? Is that a crazy couple weeks?
Yes, Sundance, it's just I know a lot of people that leave Park City while Sundance is happening because they don't want to deal with all that stuff. I don't live in Park City, but I live near it and I still feel all that. Just everything just bubbling and bursting in Park City. But it's a beautiful time. The city feels very much alive.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
all the
also
film
very cold. It's
it's
also very
cold.
it's
We got the
cold.
film geeks from, like, LA and New York
Yes,
there.
it's very funny now that I'm in Utah. It's so obvious to me when someone's not from Utah. Like,
Right.
you could just if you're a New Yorker, you just stand out, or if you're from LA, I go to this coffee shop in, the Park City Market, and Ben, he's the owner, and he's just such an amazing person, and he really built a community around that shop at Daily Rise. But I just think it's funny how we would have our little community and someone would pop in and you're like,
You're
"From
an
here, are you?"
outsider.
But we're very welcoming and it's always a joy to share experiences with people visiting the town. It's always exciting to see what they're doing there, like who they are. Are
Right.
they here because they're an actor? Are they here because are they here for the parties? Or they're here because they want to make some extra cash? So
Right. Carolina, on This Is Taste, we ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The best fruit.
Passion fruit.
Okay, for you, is it like with chocolate? Is it in a soda? How are you making passion fruit? What are you doing with it?
I like it just on its own. I get it from one market in Salt Lake City. It comes frozen. It's like $3 for a whole block of passion fruit, which is a great deal if you know how expensive passion fruit is. And I usually mix it with seltzer, but if I'm feeling very frisky, last year for my birthday, I turned it into a custard. So I made a little trifle with a passion fruit custard,
Nice.
lots of vanilla cake, and white chocolate whipped cream. And
Yo,
it
that
was
is nice.
really
That is a
delicious.
great dessert. All right, the worst vegetable.
Worst vegetable. Ooh, it's carrots.
Yeah.
I love carrots in certain specific ways. I have a recipe in my cookbook with a carrot salad that I absolutely love. I'm just not the biggest fan of carrots. I think it's because I grew up with them
Yeah.
in soups, and my parents would force me to finish everything I had in my plate, which was this mushy boiled
Yeah.
carrot from a soup that I think that scarred me. And I
The one
think
that's
that
hanging out in the chicken noodle?
yes,
That
yes.
one carrot that's
That
floating
one
there?
carrot that's like all mush
Oh,
that
yeah.
the restaurants usually discard. My parents would be like, "Here's a bowl of them. Eat it." You're like,
I knew
"No."
you would get one. I
Yeah.
knew you'd get one. Okay,
It came hard to me, but then it all made sense.
your favorite American fast food chain.
Oh, my favorite American fast food chain. Hmm. I think I'm gonna go for Shake Shack.
Okay, fair enough. I like
It's a
that.
great one. Hmm.
So what's your order? Are you shrumami? Are you
No, I'll get whatever the chicken one is.
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't get to go to Shake Shack often. I
Yeah.
get to go when I'm in New York City. They actually opened one in Utah recently, but yeah. Their frozen custards are amazing. I'm very much a custard girl. I will say this, Utah has terrific ice cream. The ice cream culture there is just
Yeah.
next level. And there's this one place called Dairy Keen, not to be confused with Dairy Queen,
Oh, wow.
that do their own soft serves and they make their own shakes. And Utah shakes, if you order a shake, it's just ice cream. Like you don't eat it with a straw, you eat it with a spoon. And they make their own soft serve and they mix fresh raspberries in it.
Oh, that
And
sounds
it's just
great.
incredible. Sometimes if I'm feeling frisky, I'm going to do a banana pudding shake
Oh,
with
wow.
Butterfingers in it.
Carolina, you're going for it. This is like, wow. Butterfinger
This
was
is
a
not
plot
a
twist.
quick fire.
No, this is an elaborate, like, middle fire, a long fire.
Yes. And also, to represent Utah even further, it's funny how I randomly ended up in Utah and I'm like, let me tell you about
Yeah,
Utah.
yeah, yeah.
They have soda chains. So a lot
I
of
was gonna
soda
ask you about
drive-throughs
that.
that I've never. So in Romania, I know one drive-through that I grew up with in my town that's like at the other side of town, and you never go to it. It's like you never ever go to it. So to come to the US and realize that everything's drive-through, which I will be honest with you, I did get used to it and
Yeah.
I am using it a little too much, but Utah has soda drive-throughs, and I'm not a big soda person, but I do go there and get their seltzer. And they do seltzer with fresh fruit, fresh raspberries, and lemon wedges. And sometimes I add like a pump of something, a pump of grapefruit or a
Now
pump
that's
of
getting frisky right
coconut.
there.
It's amazing. It's
Pump of
amazing.
grapefruit.
I remember seeing those cups for the first time when I moved to the US. They're like 64-ounce cups, and they're just incredible. It's surreal that you can even order that.
Yeah.
You
Are we
can
talking
also
Pebble
order,
Ice?
yes, Pebble Ice, and you can also get a 48-ounce hot chocolate if
Yeah.
you're feeling frisky. I haven't dabbled into that, but
That's like a big gulp style of hot chocolate.
yes, and it comes with whipped cream. So
You're
it's.
selling
I think you need to
Utah.
take a nap for like 7 days after drinking that.
Okay, your favorite cookbook of all time.
My favorite cookbook of all time. It's going to have to be, I would say, Yotamo Tolengi's Pantry one. I think it's
Yeah.
called The Pantry Love.
Yeah.
It's just a really lovely book. I love how it's organized. It's all broken down based on their ingredients that you have in the pantry, and
What a great
it's a
recipe
great
developer.
one.
He's great. Is there a cuisine you'd like to learn more about?
Ooh. You know what? I will say I would love to learn more about Romanian cuisine. I think I
Wow.
grew up with it, but I grew up with it in an environment where you already know everything and you already make everything, but I would love to dive in more into the origins of certain things because Romania has been under Austro-Hungarian occupation and Turkish occupation, and you have so many different cuisines influencing the Romanian cuisine. So I would definitely love to learn more about the origins of the foods that I
love
grew up
that
with.
goal.
Mhm.
Sounds like book 2 is happening.
I know. I would love to. I
Right?
would love to do that, like some sort of Romanian, Hungarian,
That'd be fun.
Transylvanian cookbook.
Last one, your favorite sandwich.
My favorite sandwich. Ooh. I think I'll just go for a lox sandwich.
Yeah, lox.
I love just lox cream cheese on a bagel. I usually go for a poppy seed bagel.
Smart.
If they don't have poppy, I will do sesame.
Yeah.
But if we're talking like other kinds of sandwiches, like not bagel sandwiches,
I like a good bagel sandwich.
I will say pastrami. I
Yeah,
think
pastrami's good.
as you know what? It's funny how pastrami came from Romania. Like pastrami is a Romanian word. In Romania, we call it Pastramă.
Wow.
But if you go to Romania, you won't find the pastrami that you eat in the U.S. So I would love to bring the U.S. pastrami back to Romania and show the Romanians what they've given up
that
on.
gold belly.
It's funny, yeah, totally. It's just such a lovely food. And we don't eat it enough. We don't give it. I feel like it's such, especially in New York City, people are so used to it and it's so common. But it's hard to get great pastrami anywhere else.
So you like Frankel's, I know, but what's your stance on Katz's?
I like Katz's.
What about Second Avenue
It's
Deli?
a good classes. I've never been.
Oh, that might change things for you. Second Avenue, underrated.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Carolina Gelen, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. This was a blast.
Liza, we're back. We're talking fall books. I want to take a moment to kind of solo a little bit on 4 books in this memoir biography reporting category that I've kind of made up a category. These are books that you might call them one color, though they're not all one color books, but they have more words and photos, and they're kind of in this category of, I feel that they call them like reported books or whatever. But really, these are books that you sit back, lean back, and read on your Kindle or your physical book or your library book. And really, there's 4 that jump out, and I wanted to kind of call them out. I'm hoping to have these folks on the podcast to interview them. The first one I have not read. I've been requesting it for a while, but one day I will read it. It's called Why I Cook by Tom Colicchio.
I've heard of him.
This is Tom Colicchio's long-awaited memoir. He's written it with Joshua David Stein. I had him on the show 2 years ago, I think, and he was working on it then, and we chatted a bit about the process. So, Tom is a man of very few words. If you've gotten to spend any time with him or seen him on Top Chef, he's very reserved and guarded. But we know Tom is also extremely politically active and has big ideas. I firmly believe the man will run for Congress one day. I think he has a future in policy. I feel that he has a lot more to offer our world than cooking and Top Chef, but of course this is his lane right now. So really, I'm excited to hear about Tom's journey and why he cooks. I think that there's going to be a lot of twists and turns in this. Also, obviously, Tom Colicchio biopic in the future. I haven't done my casting yet. I'm not going to even speculate, but it's in the back of my head. So that's the first one. The next one is Taste in Music, Eating on Tour with Indie Musicians by Luke Pineson and Alex Bleeker. So Luke is a taste contributor. He's been on the show and talked about this book a little bit. And really, it's a collection of dispatches from the road, from touring musicians. And really, the food and music mashup has been done before. And I'm looking forward to seeing how these essays kind of unfold and if there's a broader idea of what a touring musician in 2024, 2025 is thinking about versus the previous food books that have been done a decade ago when food is the new rock, that meme was really prevalent and people were all about the mashup. I feel we took a little break from mashing it up and now we're back. But I think it's in really smart hands with Luke and Alex. And a couple of the musicians featured include Robin Peckford from Fleet Foxes, Amelia Meath from Sylvan Esso, Chris Franz from Talking Heads. Wow.
Chris Franz. What a great get there. And then, of course, Mark Eibald from Pavement, and also of Superior Burger. If you're going to have a drink down at Superior Burger, Mark might be tending bar down there. He's a longtime fixture of bartending world in New York, and Mark's got great stories. The Beths also show up, that great New Zealand four-piece. I love the Beths. So I think the voices in this book are tremendous, and I look forward to checking it out and having Luke back to chat about it. My next book is Nigel Slater's 1,000 Feasts. Now, Nigel Slater, I was like on YouTube just like kind of scrolling it recently, and I saw Nigel's tour of his garden. It was like from Architectural Digest.
So dreamy.
Oh, have you seen this video at all?
No, but I would just imagine, knowing his books, that his garden would be spectacular.
It's such a beautiful garden, of course, but the way he purposefully talks about why he has these secret little nooks and crannies, and he does a lot of writing out there. I think of Nigel as a real elder statesman in the food writing world. He's a TV presenter in his native England. He's a cookbook author. He's really beloved by chefs and writers. And really, I've never heard of anyone speak a bad word about Nigel Slater. People love him. He's also kind of tough to pin down in terms of doing interviews. I've requested an interview with him for our podcast, probably going back 5 years since we started the show. He's never obliged, so I'm working on that one. But really, what I know about this book, which is not much, is that it is more of a memoir. It's calling it 1,000 Feasts, which is kind of, I'm deducing that it's stories of memorable meals and a little bit more of his life through all these meals in his life and in his history. And I just can't wait to read it. I'm a fan of his cookbooks, and I want to know more about Nigel Slater.
I also want to know more about Nigel Slater. So I feel like this book and all of the books you mentioned are things that I definitely need to add to my library list or maybe buy this fall.
Yeah, it's a great category, and we're gonna feature more books in the coming episodes on our show, that as we start to read them and really get them into our book bags. Do you like that word, book bag? Do you ever use that word, book bag?
No, but maybe we should all be using it more.
It takes me back to middle school. I don't know why I just came up.
Yeah, it makes me feel like a young English lad going off to school. My book bag.
I'm going to stack all these memoirs in the book bag. The last one I've talked about on the show before, but I cannot mention it enough. It's Be Ready When the Luck Happens, a memoir, and it's by Ina Garten. And I've been able to read this book. I had an advanced copy, flex there. And I'll just say that Ina does share details about her life, going back to her early days, growing up in Connecticut and really going to college and finding her way in the world in the 70s, and then eventually starting Barefoot Contestant in Long Island, and just 20 years of just straight work and hustle. And really, she had a career in the government. I can't forget about that. She worked in the White House previously to that. And it's just such a great kind of glimpse into Ina's land and world that we don't really see on television. And I just think this book is going to be a big book this fall. And I look forward to seeing how it's received and if people are satisfied with what she shares. And she does share a lot. She keeps some of it close to the chest, so it's not her whole story. Maybe it'll be a second addition or version or chapter to her story. But I love it. It's a business book more than anything. That's what I took away from it. How you can start small and really work hard and grow and not do it in a weird VC way and get capital right away. This is well before that world. And she went from one location to two, and really it all comes back to the recipes and her finding what her audience liked to buy at the shop and really eventually finding her way into television. It's a great section there about how she ended up on the Food Network reluctantly. And then, of course, we know the rest of the story. Ina Garten is who we love. And really, I think this book is terrific, and you should all check it out this fall.
Thanks for sharing all these picks with us, Matt.
Thanks, Eliza. This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbar. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.